Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I was 3 hours into my shift when the call came in. An almost casual tone from dispatch, the kind that makes your heart skip a beat. Deputy, survey crew at Miller's Quarry found something odd. Head east on 112, check it out. I pressed my lips together, kept my voice even. Copy that. En route. I flicked off the in-car heater, rolled down the window, and let the cold air press against my face. At 2:16 a.m., everything that breathed felt alive. The steady hum of the engine, the crunch of gravel under tires, the distant rumble of wind across empty fields. County Road 112 was a ribbon of asphalt cut through dark farmland, broken only by strobe light flashes at the quarry entrance. I killed the headlights a half-mile out, then backlit my cruiser under the lone flood lamp swinging on its chain. The surveyor's lights carved long shadows across jagged rock walls, illuminating steel tools and crooked stakes driven into the earth. I stepped out, boots sinking into loose shards of sandstone and mud, each crunch echoing like a warning. My flashlight cut through the gloom, a thin beam highlighting a half-buried slab of stained concrete. I knelt, hands finding the cool surface. There was something bone-white peeking from a crack. I swallowed hard, radioing Parker and Ruiz to bring medical and the coroner. My voice was steady, but inside I felt the old knot tighten. While I waited, I circled the quarry rim. Wind tugged at my coat, carrying the scent of damp earth and something metallic. The generator's low drone made my chest tighten, like an unseen hand pressing down. I counted empty beer cans near a rusty mixer, footprints, too many, and wondered how someone could plan this. 3 bodies encased in raw concrete, faces twisted as if their last breaths fought to escape. Dust from the broken walls swirled in the floodlight, settling like ash over my uniform. I stood back, gloves tight, and let the silence press in, only the radio's static reminding me I wasn't alone. Deputy Parker arrived first, headlights cutting into shadow. Ruiz trailed behind, camera in hand. We moved like soldiers, cataloging evidence flags, A through L. I read Harley's crew notes, saw human remains scrawled in shaky handwriting. The coroner wasn't due for another 2 hours. For now, I kept my distance. I called in a brief statement, coordinates, visible remains, no signs of local report matching these victims. Then I climbed into my cruiser, hands wrapping around the steering wheel with more force than I realized. I needed coffee, needed to clear my head before the paperwork started. I drove to the edge of town, headlights reflecting off worn road signs and abandoned barns until the cafe's neon sign burned blue in the dark. 3 days later, the letter appeared. I found it on my desk when I returned from briefing state police. No envelope, just a folded sheet in crisp white. I unfolded it under my desk lamp. The quarry was only the beginning. 7 more sites around Redwood County. I helped him. I've carried this secret too long. Come to Mill Creek Bridge alone at midnight. I'll show you where they lie. I stared at the words, fingers tracing each letter, fluorescent ink causing a subtle shimmer. I felt anger. How dare someone toy with me? And a flicker of dread. I'd seen hoaxes before. Kids seeking thrills, loose talkers craving attention. But something in the penmanship, jagged lines, shaky loops, spoke of someone older, someone who'd trembled while writing. I briefed Parker and Ruiz, laid out a covert surveillance plan. They'd park 200 yards from the bridge, low visibility vests but no flashlights. I'd approach in uniform, lights on, radio on, protocol intact. If it was a hoax, I'd walk away. If it was real, I'd need witnesses. When midnight came, I drove through silent fields, headlights carving a path to the old Mill Creek Bridge. Once a rail line, now abandoned, its steel girders sagged over a shallow creek that whispered beneath. I stepped out, the guardrail clang audible in the hush. Wind scurried under my collar. I walked beneath the girders, gravel crunching, and knelt at the far pillar. Loose stones shifted as I lifted one. There it was, a faded sandwich container. Inside, a folded map on yellowed paper and another note. I watched your backup arrive. You followed protocol. Good. Now, find all 15 graves marked here. Near water towers, old barns, storm cellars. Prove you can be trusted. I felt bile rise, but I kept my mouth shut. I called it in. Parker's voice crackled back. "We've got your 6, I said. "Start digging at the Pinevale water tower." My thumb brushed the radio button, but I hesitated. That map listed sites I hadn't even imagined. Fields I'd driven by 100 times without a second thought. Something about that chain of numbers and tiny X's felt like a countdown. I exhaled, pocketed the map, and returned to the cruiser. By 4 a.m., we were at Pinevale's old water tower lot, an overgrown patch where a feed mill once stood, now a tangle of weeds and collapsed machinery. We set orange cones and unrolled tarps. The first shovel strike sent dusty clods flying, but it wasn't long before we hit wood. Planks rotted at the edges. My heart thumped as Parker peeled back remnants of floorboards. Beneath, the concrete slab sat flush with the soil. I knelt, touched the cool surface, and watched Ruiz snap photos. I ran my glove across the edge, tracing hairline cracks. 2 bodies. I called the coroner. I called dispatch. Each radio transmission felt like a confession. When the slab was lifted, dirt rained down, revealing coarse fibers of rope. Cement dust matted to clothes. One set of footprints led away, small like a woman's boots. I crouched in the dark morning light, looked down at the block of gray, and wondered how many times I'd driven past that spot without noticing the grave beneath. I pressed my palm to the concrete, felt the rough surface. No heroics, no oath, just work that needed doing. Over the next 2 weeks, we uncovered 9 more slabs, behind barns with broken windows, at the edge of abandoned cellars, beneath sagging porches. Each site brought its own odor of disturbed earth and stale breath. Every time I wrapped my hands around that cold wheel, I remembered the faces I'd seen molded in concrete, mouths frozen in silent screams. By day, I filled out reports, sat through forensic briefings. By night, I scanned grainy maps in my office, marking each red X with shaking fingers. I logged phone calls to families. Some believed their loved ones were off somewhere, alive. I kept my voice steady, told them we'd found them. Each thank you felt like a lie. Late one evening, a burner phone appeared on my doorstep, taped under the front stoop. Screen lit with a single message. "You've found 14 of 15. 1 left. Meet me at the Old Thorn property tonight at 10. Alone." I stared at the phone under street lamp glow, thumb hovering over the reply button. Officers railed at me. Federal agents wanted to swoop in, plan a raid, call in SWAT. But I saw something in that message. Regret, maybe fear. I couldn't let him vanish. I typed back, "I'll be there." Then I tucked the phone into my coat and walked to my cruiser, headlights slicing through the hush. At 10:03 p.m., I parked at the Thorn farmhouse. Boarded windows, sagging porch roof. Porch light flickered. I stepped out, boots sinking into wet grass, flashlight angled against the siding. I saw her before she spoke. A thin figure in the shadows, shoulders hunched, no weapon visible. I holstered my pistol but kept my hand near the grip. "Deputy Callahan," she whispered. She stepped forward. Woman in her 40s, eyes rimmed red. "My name's Marla Bennett," she said, voice trembling. "I helped bury them. I have the journal." She held out a leather-bound book, edges worn. "Every name, every date. You need to see this." I took the journal, flipped it open. Inside, scrawled entries. March 12, 2002. Andrew Baylor, feed mill seller. April 5th, 2003. Jessica Warren, Miller Road, barn. My knuckles whitened on the cover. I looked at her pale face, saw tears glint in moonlight. "I'm sorry I helped," she said. "He called it cleansing. He's gone now, dead since 2008. I can't keep this secret." I steadied my breath. Radio keyed but silent. I believed her. We drove back to the station, Marla in the passenger seat, hands clasped tight around the journal. I kept my eyes on the road, headlights cutting lines in the darkness. When we arrived, I led her to the interview room, cold coffee waiting. I pushed the journal across the table. "Tell me everything," I said. Her shoulders shook as she began. "It started with drifters, hitchhikers. Figured no one would notice if they vanished. Outside, the radio sat idle, the station clock ticking toward midnight. And I listened. A deputy trapped between duty and the weight of a secret 17 years old, knowing that by dawn everything would change forever. I drove Marla into the station's dimly lit back lot and shut off the engine. The night air pressed against the closed windows, muffling sounds of late shift radios and distant traffic. My uniform felt stifling, every seam pinching at the shoulders. Marla sat rigid, journal clutched to her chest, eyes fixed on the dashboard light. I killed the headlights and stepped out, boots echoing on concrete. Inside, the locked door clicked behind me. In the interrogation room, the fluorescent bulb buzzed overhead. I slid the journal across the metal table without a word. Marla's fingers hovered over its worn cover. She took a shuddering breath. "I was 19 the first time," she began. "Pharaoh said I'd understand eventually, that I'd see why certain people needed to disappear." I watched her throat work as she swallowed. He had his methods. I was his driver, his assistant. I dug the holes, set the frames, mixed the mortar. Then I washed up and forgot. Her voice was low, clipped. Each word fell like a stone in the silence. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Tell me how it started," I said. She closed her eyes. "He found the first one on his route. A hitchhiker bleeding from a roadside accident. Pharaoh said nobody cared about drifters. He said if he buried him deep, nobody would find him. I helped. We poured the concrete at dawn, loaded bodies into the crusher." Her fingers tightened on the journal. "That was 2001. After that, people came to him. Dark rumors, whispers. He'd pick names, times. He said he'd cleanse the county." I felt bile rise in my throat. I swallowed, steadied myself. "Why concrete?" Marla hesitated. "He believed it was perfect. No decay, no chance of discovery. He liked the irony, turning flesh into stone. He said it made their suffering eternal, visible only to him." Every syllable hit like a bullet. I pictured Pharaoh's workshop. Mixers stained dark, the smell of cement and blood, his hands guiding hers. I looked at Marla's face, lines of guilt carved into skin too young for such weight. "How many did you help kill?" I asked. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down. 19. You found 15. killed them all between 2001 and 2008. I stopped when he died. I burned what I could, buried the rest. Her admission echoed in the small room. I picked up the journal, thumbs brushing entries. June 12, 2004. Michael Shaw, boarding house cellar. July 3, 2005. Tamara Lee, Hollow Creek Road. November 21, 2006, Carlton Hayes, Redwood Bridge. Each line was a death sentence, each date an anniversary of horror. I flipped to a later page. April 14, 2008, last. Tomorrow, we're done. Underneath, a shaky script. Goodbye. I looked up at Marla. You ever try to stop him? Her eyes went blank. Once, she whispered, voice cracking. He beat me until I bled, told me obedience kept me alive. I knew if I said no again, I'd be next. I stood abruptly, chair scraping. My heart pounded so loud I thought the room would hear it. I stalked to the one-way mirror, pressed my hand to the glass. Parker and Ruiz peered back, grim nods. I turned back to Marla. You're coming with me, I said, and you're going to show us the last grave. Marla's lips quivered. I can't go back there. That storm cellar, he kept secrets beyond the bodies. I pulled my badge free, laid it on the table. You either lead us now, or you stay locked up until you do. The badge glinted. She exhaled, voice hollow. Take me to Pharaoh's. I radioed for backup, state police with excavation equipment, forensics, medical examiners. Marla stood, journal tucked under one arm. I holstered my pistol, grabbed a flashlight, and walked her through the station corridors, past the bullpen's flickering monitors. Deputies gave us space. We emerged into the cold night again. The cruiser's heater coughed when I started it. The drive to the old Pharaoh property was silent. Gravel kicked up behind us. Headlights sliced through tree branches overhead. Each mile felt longer, every rustle in the woods a phantom. When we reached the locked gate, I cut it with bolt cutters. The hinges groaned. We drove down the rutted drive, past collapsed barns and weed-choked fields, until the farmhouse came into view. Windows boarded, paint peeling, the porch sagging. A single motion sensor lamp flicked as we walked up. Marla's boots stumbled. She hated to step on the rotten planks. I kept my hand near my radio. The air smelled of mold, rotting wood, and faint chemical tang. I motioned her forward. She swallowed, shoulders shaking. I led her to a hatch half hidden by vines. The bolt was rusty. I pried it open. A staircase descended, each step creaking under weight. I kept my flashlight pointed down. Far below, darkness pressed in, so complete it felt alive. At the bottom, I clicked on extra lights, portable LEDs cutting beams through dust motes. The storm cellar was small, concrete walls, a single wooden bench, a work table covered in rusted tools. In one corner, tiny hand-painted frames for pouring concrete lay stacked, 16 of them labeled in faded ink. I crouched to inspect. These are molds. I ran a glove over a box scrawled October 9th, 2007. Marla swallowed. That one was the twins. Her voice trembled. He got 2 kids off Redwood Bridge, thought siblings would be easier, less search. I closed my eyes, fought the bile. I knelt, picked up a mold, small for children. I flicked my light around, footprints, a dirty tarp, broken chains. Every tool whispered stories. I knew I'd never unsee this. I radioed for evidence techs. Voices crackled back. Deputy, we're en route. I turned to Marla. Her face was pale, lips parted. She stared at the frames. I thought they died quick. I guided her to a folding chair. Tell them what happened, I said. All of it. She nodded, hand shaking. I held up my recorder. Outside, the wind rattled the cellar hatch. I clicked record and stepped back. Marla leaned forward, voice low. It was never quick. And as she spoke, every heavy word filling the room, I felt the walls close in. The air tasted stale, thick with smoke of guilt. My heart hammered. This was no longer about slabs of concrete or maps with red X's. This was about unraveling cruelty bound in mortar, piece by piece. Above, the storm rumbled, distant, low, and I listened, knowing the final slab still waited somewhere in the dark, its secret buried beneath fields I'd never dare walk alone again. Marla's voice trembled as she leaned forward, the recorder's red light catching in her eyes. It was never quick, she began, and I felt every word like a cold blade. After I poured the first one, I thought I could forget. But the sound, it crawled under my skin. The way they thrashed, like drowning in stone. He loved that sound. We sat in the stained concrete room as she described the method. How Pharaoh would tie their wrists, wrap their ankles, then place them in the mold. How the mortar, wet and thick, would swallow them inch by inch. How the dyeing would go on for minutes, sometimes hours. I felt bile rise but swallowed it down. I needed every scrap of truth. Outside, the night pressed in through cracks around the cellar door. Distant thunder rolled, and the old house groaned with the wind. My radio crackled. "Deputy, techs are at the hatch." I nodded, and Marla closed her eyes, as if bracing herself. "Tell them about the last one," I said. She opened her eyes, stared at the mud-streaked floor. He called her the final sacrifice. Her voice faltered. He found her on the highway, a runaway headed for nowhere, 15 years old. Name was Emily Rhodes. She paused, tears spilling. She reminded him of his daughter, or who his daughter could have been. He said he wanted to purify her before she lost her way. My throat clenched. I pressed a hand to my chest, fighting for breath. "Where is her mold?" I asked quietly. Marla pointed toward a dark corner where a single wooden crate lay under a tarpaulin. I lifted the tarp. Inside, a box smaller than the others, edges splintered. I knelt, brushing dust away. October 31st, 2008. I looked at Marla. She nodded. I radioed, voice steady. "This is Deputy Callahan. We have confirmation of the final mold. I need personnel here. ASAP, secure the storm cellar." Then I turned off the radio and faced Marla. "You're sure this is the last?" She swallowed, voice raw. "Yes, he died the next day. Heart attack, just like that." She snapped her fingers. Nothing more. The two techs arrived, uniformed men carrying LED towers, evidence bags, cameras. They set lights high, turning the cellar into a harsh, white-lit scene. I watched as they photographed the mold, measured its dimensions, bagged the crate. I stood back, shadow against the wall, remembering every slab I'd seen. Marla stood in the center, head bowed. I approached, hand near my holster. "You did right by telling us," I said softly. She didn't look up. "It ends tonight." She met my eyes. "I'm ready." I led her up the stairs through the flood of lights outside. State police cruisers blocked the driveway, lights red and blue bathing the farmhouse in color. News vans clustered at the public road's edge. I guided Marla to a waiting SUV, where agents sat behind tinted windows. They stepped out, badges glinting. "Deputy Callahan," said Agent Reese, voice clipped. "We appreciate your work. We'll take it from here." He turned to Marla. "Miss Bennett, we need a full written statement." He gestured to a folding, table and chairs under a canopy. I watched as Marla was led away, journal in hand, but she paused and looked back at me. Her eyes met mine, haunted, relieved. I nodded once, and she disappeared among the agents. Behind me, the farmhouse loomed. I stayed at the edge of the scene until the last evidence bag was loaded onto a truck. Then I walked alone back to my cruiser, the hush of midnight settling. My uniform felt heavy. My boots sank into wet grass. I climbed in, heart pounding, radio silent. I started the engine and leaned back, eyes on the dark silhouette of the house. No one would ever pour concrete here again, but the echoes remained. I thought of Emily Rhodes, 15, terrified, buried alive like a sacrifice. I thought of the twins Pharaoh had taken together, of the faces I'd seen in fractured dreams. I pulled out the map, now marked complete, every X crossed out. I let it slip from my hand. It fluttered to the passenger seat. I closed my eyes and exhaled, the engine's hum matching the quickness of my heart. I drove away without looking back, headlights carving through the night, towards home, towards nothing. The road stretched on, straight and empty. I pressed my palms against the wheel, knuckles white, and whispered into the dark, "Rest now." But as the cruiser's lights faded into the distance, a single raindrop hit the windshield, cold, insistent, and steady, like the beginning of something else, something unresolved, waiting in the shadows just beyond the road's end. I wasn't sure how long I sat there in the cruiser before I finally pushed the door open and stepped back into the rain. The downpour had grown steady, each raindrop striking the hood like a muted drumbeat. My uniform clung to my skin. Water pooled in the soles of my boots, but I needed to move. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the edge of the Thorne property, where the undergrowth swallowed broken fence posts and half-buried tools. The agents had left. State police, FBI, everyone had their reports and evidence, but something tugged at me. One last detail Marla had hinted at, something she never said out loud. I slid beneath a sagging cedar, using its boughs for cover, and followed a faint path she'd mentioned that led beyond the barn. The flashlight's beam caught on metal. An old feeding trough cracked in half. I knelt, fingers tracing a series of shallow indentations on its rim. They looked like initials carved by someone waiting, maybe frightened. E.R. Emily Rhodes. I swallowed hard. I pressed my thumb into the letters, felt the cold edge of metal beneath bruised flesh. Footsteps splashed behind me. I whirled. Parker emerged, rain sliding off his jacket collar. "Deputy, you okay?" he asked, voice muffled by the storm. I nodded, though my chest felt hollow. "Just checking something Marla mentioned," I said. He squinted through the rain. "She told us she buried the final mold under the floorboards of the farmhouse, but said the trough might have a clue." I looked back at the trough, gnarled and rusted. She said Emily left a mark, as if she wanted someone to find her. Parker crouched next to me, flashlight joining mine. "You think she carved it?" he murmured. I swallowed. Thought of a terrified girl forced into that mold. "I think she tried to leave a message." My heart pounded. I reached into my pocket, found an evidence baggie, and sealed a small fragment of metal with the carvings. "Get this logged. We're not done here." We made our way back toward the cruiser, leaving the trough behind. But I couldn't shake the thought. Emily Rhodes had tried to speak from beyond, had hoped someone, someday, would hear her. A chill ran down my spine. 2 nights later, I was back on patrol. Road slick with rain, neon signs smeared by windshield wipers. Midnight had passed, and the county felt hollow, as though it held its breath, waiting. My radio murmured routine calls, loud music at a farmhouse, a cow loose on Highway 33, a suspicious vehicle near an old church. I responded to the church call. The church was a white clapboard building set back from the road. Parking lot empty, except for a rusted pickup and a single sedan whose brake lights glowed red against wet asphalt. I stepped out, boots squelching, flashlight cutting through the stained glass windows that glinted in the rain. Inside, pews sat empty, but the hush was heavier than usual, with rain drumming on the roof and wind sighing through broken shutters. I called dispatch. "Deputy Callahan, en route to check the church." I crossed the threshold, flashlight leading me down the central aisle. Pews lined both sides, hymnals splayed open on worn wood. A puddle shimmered by the altar, reflecting the flicker of my light. I walked to the altar rail, scuffs in the wood, muddy footprints. I crouched, saw scratch marks, letters carved into the kneeler. "Help me." My breath caught. I traced each gouge, blackened by age, and moisture wood creaked behind me. I spun, no one there. The church felt alive. The wind moaned through the bell tower. Shutters battered the walls. My radio crackled. "Deputy, check that sedan for a driver." I clicked on my mic. "Copy." I stepped outside and approached the sedan. Rain streamed down the windows. I leaned in, empty. Just a set of muddy footprints leading to the church doors. No other tracks. My pulse raced. I returned inside, knees knocking. I scanned the darkness. Pews, altar, pulpit. Nothing. Then I saw it. Near the baptismal font, drips of concrete dust on the stone edge. My stomach dropped. I shone the light on the droplets. Tiny, as if a fine mist had settled there. I crouched, ran a gloved finger through the dust. It smeared gray. Wet mortar? Uncured concrete? I radioed Parker. "Bring Ruiz and a forensics kit. We've got a situation at St. Mary's Church." Agents arrived within minutes, 9-month-old case files in hand, ready to collect. I stayed back, letting them dust for prints, bag samples, and photograph the droplets. Through the window, I saw headlights flicker as a lone car pulled away. I watched until it vanished down the highway, lights swallowed by the rain. Inside, Ruiz called out, "Deputy, look at this." He held up a small clear bag containing a single shoe print cast in concrete. Size 7, narrow, feminine. A boot heel with RF stamped on the sole. RF for Robert Farrow. My blood ran cold. I knelt, touched the bag, heart thundering. This was no random sight. Someone had gone to the trouble of bringing fresh concrete here, pouring a boot print. But to what end? A warning? A message? A lure? I shone my flashlight around, half expecting to see Marla Bennett's face in the shadows. Or something more sinister. Hours later, I sat in my cruiser, rain still falling. The print cast sat on the passenger seat. I stared at the mark. R.F. Ralph Farrow, dead 17 years. His initials imprinted in wet mortar as if he were still here, reminding us that the nightmare hadn't ended. In the weeks that followed, pastors reported strange noises at night, locks found smeared with concrete dust, footprints appearing and disappearing on church steps. We set patrols, increased lighting, hoped to catch someone in the act. But the prints never matched any suspect in our system. Late one evening, I got a call. "Deputy, someone left a package at the post office. No return address." Inside was a single vial of concrete dust, white, powdery, and a note scrawled on notebook paper. "I told you I'd never really be gone." The courier's signature? RF. I held the vial under the desk lamp, watching dust motes swirl in the beam. I poured a little onto a plate, let it harden into a thin crust. Then I ran my finger through it, smearing the dry cement. Could it be a prank? Maybe. But my gut told me someone was taunting us. Someone still bound to Pharaoh's legacy. I filed the vial as evidence, labeled it unidentified cement sample. But each time I passed it in the evidence locker, I felt the weight of those 19 souls, their faces pressed into cold stone, their pleas unheard. And now, someone was writing cement dust across church altars and porches, mocking the law, mocking the dead. On the 31st of October, exactly 17 years after Pharaoh's last pouring, I drove past the cemetery where the victims were laid to rest. Headstones polished, flowers wilted, curtains of fog drifting between graves. A chill wind carried the scent of damp earth and funeral wreaths. I slowed the cruiser, saw a fresh slab of wet cement poured across a new memorial. No names, no dates, just a rectangle of gray. I parked, rain pelting the windshield, and stepped out. The cement was still wet, edges crisp, waiting to harden. A single boot imprint, size 7, marked the center, heel pressed deep. RF. I froze, heart hammering. Someone had come here, under cover of night, and poured fresh concrete over the graveyard, a final offering, or a curse. I ran my gloved hand over the print, felt the imprint under slick, wet cement, and I realized this was no longer about uncovering graves. It was about facing a presence that refused to stay buried. I looked up at the rows of headstones, half lost in fog. The wind whispered through the trees as if carrying a voice I couldn't quite hear. I stepped back, heart pounding, and I knew this story wasn't over, not by a long shot. The road back to the station stretched out before me, shrouded in mist. I climbed into the cruiser, boots wet, uniform stiff. I killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the rain drum on the roof and the engine's stillness. I whispered into the dark, "It ends here." But as I turned the key, the dashboard clock flickered, and for a heartbeat, the numbers rearranged themselves. 0019. And I knew, with a certainty colder than the concrete under my fingertips, that Ralph Farrow's final message was far from finished. I passed the cemetery gates behind the cruiser, headlights slicing through the morning fog like twin searchlights. Damp grass brushed against my boots as I climbed the low stone wall that bordered the 50 memorials for the 19 victims, with 2 new wreaths placed hastily atop fresh earth. I had returned alone, ignoring protocol, ignoring the calls from dispatch asking for status updates. The imprint of that size 7 heel still burned under my skin, RF pressed into wet cement like an ominous signature no death could erase. I stepped between the headstones, each polished black slab reflecting the dull glow of the overcast sky. The first memorial was for Michael Shaw, the feed mill seller victim, and at its base lay a small wilted bouquet of daisies wrapped in clear plastic. I knelt and ran my fingertips along the stone's smooth surface, the inscription reading, "In memory of those lost, found, and never forgotten." Exhaled, I let the air tremble from my lungs before standing and moving on, each step a soft crackle of gravel. About halfway down the row, I spotted the fresh concrete, still damp. I crouched and pressed a gloved hand against the cool but firm rectangle, noting the slight give at the edges. I could see the faint outline of the boot's tread pattern imprinted there. 2 parallel rows of inverted triangles, the letters RF carved into the leather sole. I traced the grooves with my fingertip, feeling the realism of a killer's arrogance. Blood pulsed in my temples. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening to the water drip from the oak trees, the rasp of wind through sodden leaves, my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. I reached into my jacket pocket and withdrew the evidence tag. Case 2019-Q3, RF Cemetery imprint. I snapped it onto a small metal stake I'd carved from wire. The paperwork blurred across my vision. I wedged the stake into the ground at the concrete's edge. If evidence techs found nothing else here, they would at least document the imprint. Protocol demanded I leave now, alert dispatch, wait for forensics, but my gut told me this wasn't over. The rain started then, fat, lazy drops falling from gunmetal clouds. I pulled my collar up, let water pool at the base of my neck. Hood up, I felt the gravel give way under each step as I ducked under the maples to the next memorial, the one for Emily Rhodes. I'd never seen her name on a tombstone until then. The stone read, Emily Rhodes, October 31st, 2008. The date Ralph Farrow's final victim had perished. Next to her memorial, I found a single, half-charred matchstick pressed into the ground, its burnt head pointing toward the sky. I knelt and pocketed the matchstick, slipping it into a plastic evidence bag. A burnt match at a cemetery was hardly ordinary. Someone wanted investigators to find particular clues, someone still shaping the narrative. But who? And why? I shivered, imagining Marla Bennett's trembling admission. Emily had carved ER into that rusty trough before Farrow closed the lid. She had left behind marks, hoping someone would hear her. But now, 17 years later, someone continued her message. Someone with access to fresh cement, to the victim's final resting place, and to the tools needed for another act of desecration. The fog thickened, trailing across the graves like ghostly fingers. I could almost hear the faint scrape of metal on stone, the echo of dripping mortar, the rasp of breathing. I snapped my flashlight on, sweeping the beam across the tree line. Raw branches arched overhead, limbs slick with rain. A fallen limb cracked under the weight of water. I startled, radioing dispatch. Deputy Callahan, suspicious activity at cemetery. Request forensics ASAP. Over. Static hissed in response. I retreated to the cruiser and sat inside, heartbeat echoing against the console. Dash clock read 4:47. At home, dawn would break in a couple of hours. Here, in Redwood County, dawn knew nothing of rest, only the promise of more questions. I pulled out my notebook, thumbed to the last entry. October 31st, 2008. Last. Tomorrow, we're done. Written by Farrow himself. But my notebook had grown heavy with new notes. October 31st, 2025, new imprint. Cemetery. I scribbled pattern underneath, circling the word twice. My coffee sat cold in the cup holder. I lifted it, inhaled the acrid scent of burnt grounds and morning chill. I thought of the church, the smeared concrete prints in St. Mary's, the messages carved into kneelers, the empty sedan, the sound of footsteps that didn't belong. Each site felt staged, as though a director guided the horror, choreographing every detail to maximize dread. It felt personal, like the killer, or someone like him, wanted me to know they were still watching. 2 hours later, back at headquarters, I stood before a whiteboard in the command office. It was covered in red lines connecting maps, dates, and victim names. Yellow Post-its fluttered at the edges. Miller Q, Quarry, Mill Creek Bridge, Pinevale Water Tower, Thorn Farmstead, Old Barn S County Line, St. Mary's Church, Cemetery. Each site marked a discovery. Each discovery had come with a clue. A letter, a dusty imprint, a matchstick, a live burner phone message, and now, cemetery linked to a fresh slab of concrete. I picked up a marker and added a new note in red ink. New target, to be determined. My reflection trembled in the glass behind me. Tired eyes, stubble-strewn jaw, uniform coat damp from rain. I tapped the whiteboard. Then the marker's cap flew off and rolled across the floor. I didn't bother picking it up. Instead, I turned to my desk, buried under files. I grabbed the evidence bag with Emily Rhodes's matchstick, the vial of unidentified cement dust, and Pharaoh's mold fragments. I dumped them onto the desk in a clatter of plastic and metal, then exhaled, hands rubbing my temples. My radio crackled. "Deputy, we've got forensics on scene at cemetery." I clicked the mic, voice even. "Copy. Secure the memorial area. Keep unauthorized personnel back." Then I tapped the mic. "Also, send additional officers to patrol all previous sites." The reply was nearly drowned out by static, but I caught Parker's voice. "Understood, Deputy." I ended the call and buried my face in my hands. This should have been a closed chapter. Criminal dead, accomplice cooperating, victims finally at rest. But now, with every ritualistic imprint, every staged clue, every message typed or carved, I realized we were in a new phase. Someone wanted to keep the story alive, to keep us frightened, to remind us that even when killers die, their shadows can linger, and sometimes they find new flesh to haunt. I stood, pacing between desks. The bullpen empty at this hour, deputies off duty, agents busy with administrative duties. I flicked off the room's overhead light and walked to the evidence locker. Its cold steel door loomed in the darkness. I swiped my badge, dialed the code, and stepped inside. Rows of shelves held sealed bags, artifacts of murder. Hair samples, bone fragments, ticket stubs, lockpicks, cell phone logs. My gaze settled on a lone shelf labeled cement evidence. I reached for bag 6, my gloved hand trembling. I opened it, the airtight seal popping. The small block of wet cement sat inside, edges soft, imprint faint but discernible. I closed my eyes, breathed in the musty scent of stone and memory. I thought of the 19, each one swallowed by cement, each one now calling out through prisms of dust and fresh pourings. A low buzz sounded in the locker, my phone vibrating against my belt. I ignored it, but the buzzing continued, insistent. I stepped back, closed the locker door, and checked my phone. A message from unknown. "You missed one. Meet me at the water tower, midnight, come alone, no signature, no context, just 4 lines typed in uppercase." My blood turned cold. I set the phone on silent and slid it into my pocket. I closed the evidence locker with a click that echoed in the empty hallway. I headed for the exit, pulling on my coat. Outside, a light rain had begun again, and the street lamps threw halos on slick pavement. In the distance, a train whistle sounded, too far to pinpoint but close enough to carry on the wind. Each drop of rain felt like a countdown, a reminder that midnight would come again, with promises to be kept, stories to be finished, secrets to be spilled, or perhaps to bury me as well. As I walked toward my cruiser, I glanced up at the clock on the patrol room wall. 2:13, 39 minutes until midnight summons. I shoved my hands in my pockets, thumb resting on the phone. I whispered to the damp air, "Not alone." Then I climbed into the driver's seat, turned the key, and watched the fog swirl around the headlights. I drove out of the station lot, heart thrumming with anticipation and dread. Ahead lay the water tower, cold steel towering above empty fields, paint peeling in the moonlight. The road to it wound past barns and empty homesteads, places where the dead had once been placed, now silent monuments. I clenched the steering wheel, knuckles white, and whispered under my breath, "Let's finish this." And as the cruiser's engine idled and the lights cut a path through darkness, I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me, keen, patient, and infinite. The road ahead promised answers, or final ends. But I knew that between now and midnight, every mile would exact its price. And when the hour struck, I would stand alone beside the water tower, listening for the echo of concrete settling into the earth, and praying that this time, the final imprint would be the only one left to find. I eased the cruiser onto County Road 112, headlights slicing through low fog that curled like restless spirits among cornstalks. Midnight had slipped past 2 minutes ago, and the air felt electric, each breath sharp against my lungs. My pulse throbbed in time with the wiper, blades slapping the windshield, erasing droplets only to let more take their place. The phone's unknown message weighed in my pocket like a hand. You missed one. Meet me at the water tower. Midnight. Come alone. I told dispatch I had a solo welfare check at Station 5 and slipped the cruiser down a gravel lane leading to Pinevale's water tower lot. The tower rose above the fields, skeletal white against a starless sky. A single security light flickered at its base, one bulb blinking in a rhythm that felt deliberate, like a Morse code calling my name. I stopped 50 yards away, engine ticking as it cooled. The wipers stilled, leaving the glass in half darkness. I looked down at my uniform, damp from earlier rain patrols, badge catching the light. I adjusted my belt, felt the weight of my sidearm, and grabbed my flashlight. I stepped out, boots sinking slightly in loose gravel, and walked toward the tower. Each step echoed around me, footfalls swallowed by cottony mist. I passed the overturned crates where we'd unearthed that slab weeks ago, dirt still clinging to seams. I paused there, stared at the disturbed earth, and smelled wet cement faint in the air, the same tang that had trailed me from church altars to cemetery headstones. I ran a glove over the gravel, found a single boot print, size 7, inverted triangles in the tread. Too neat, too purposeful. I pressed the print into an evidence bag, sealing it without thinking. Better safe than sorry. The water tower's ladder led up into darkness. I knew the base area by heart. A ring of cracked concrete 30 feet in diameter, weeds forcing cracks open like fingernails. Near one crack, a circle of fresh mortar glinted in the beam, still tacky, uncured. A single letter scrawled crudely in its center. E. I crouched, heart racing, and traced the mark with my fingertip. E for Emily? E for end? I swallowed hard, my throat tight with suspicion and dread. My breath hung in front of me in a haze. I heard a click behind me, soft, mechanical, like a camera shutter. I spun. The beam of my flashlight caught the silhouette of a figure slipping between the tower's legs. A woman's shape, hunched, face hidden under a hood. My hand flew to the flashlight's button, sending a narrow cone of light across the metal framework. The figure froze, then darted to the far side, disappearing into shadow. I took 2 steps forward. "Stop right there," I called, voice firm, though it trembled. "Deputy Callahan, County Sheriff's Office. Show yourself." Silence, save for wind rustling high weeds. I clicked on my radio. "Dispatch, I'm at the water tower. Possible suspect on scene." Static. "Repeat, possible suspect." No answer. I holstered my radio, pressed the flashlight into my palm, and moved closer, scanning every shadow between crossed support beams. My boots crunched as I circled the tower, tension coiling in my chest. Then, at the far edge, I saw footprints leading into nearby cornfield. Wet footprints marring the dusty stalks. I followed, stepping between rows, each plant brushing wet sleeves. The prints ended at a broken metal gate, its latch hanging loose. Beyond was an old cow pasture, now overgrown. I clicked off the flashlight to listen, only my own breathing and the hum of a distant transformer. My radio crackled to life. "Deputy, is everything okay?" Parker's voice, relief tinting his words. "We lost your signal." "Everything's fine," I said, voice low. "You can scrap my solo check. Securing site now, stand down." I clicked off the mic. It felt wrong, lying to him. But I didn't want backup until I knew who I was facing. I stepped out of the cornstalks and headed back to the tower. A fresh breeze rattled the ladder's cage, causing it to clank against the leg. My gaze snapped upward, foot high, crossed rungs dripping with moisture. I followed upward, searching for movement, but the ladder disappeared into inky black. The beam of my flashlight hit something at the base, a small, charred wooden block. I knelt, swept dirt away, and revealed a burnt matchstick identical to the one by Emily's memorial. I pocketed it. I stood and turned toward the fresh mortar circle. The letter E now had additional markings. There were 3 marks: E, an arrow pointing left, and a tiny star beneath. My mind raced. A star for the old miller's quarry's survey rig. Arrow left for the Carver barn? Or was it a map? Something was guiding me, pushing me along a path only I could follow. Then I heard a voice, soft, barely above a whisper. "Stop!" It came from my left. I swung the flashlight and caught movement by a fence post. Someone crouched there, another figure, but this one spoke with a quaver. "Please, don't come closer." I moved cautiously, every sense screaming. Flashlight beam traced an arm, a slender hand stained gray. "Deputy Callahan," the voice said. "It's me." The figure straightened. The hood fell back, revealing Marla Bennett's pale face, eyes red-rimmed. My chest tightened. "Marla," I said, relief and confusion colliding. She shook her head. "Number, not me." She reached back into her coat and pulled out a worn notebook, different from the leather one she'd given me. "He left this here." She flicked it open with numb fingers. Pages, blank save for one sentence scrawled in unfamiliar handwriting. "1 more to go. Midnight tomorrow, Hollow Creek Road, be alone or be next." My heart lurched. Hollow Creek Road was 5 miles south. A dead straight stretch lined by pines, known for disappearances but never like this. I stared at Marla. No, not Marla. Her eyes blank, lips parted. "Who are you?" I asked. She only shook her head, mouth opening to speak, then closing as if the words choked her. She dropped the notebook, backing away. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "It's not me." Then she turned and ran, boots slapping gravel. I knelt, picked up the notebook, thumbed to the rewrite. The ink glistened, fresh as dew. I read, "1 more to go. Midnight tomorrow, Hollow Creek Road. Be alone or be next." My flashlight beam slipped to the water tower's ladder. A dark shape perched on the rung 5 feet above me. Foot lengths too clean, too precise. A wide, leather boot sole pressed against the rung. Inverted triangles imprinted deep, the letters RF stamped into softened rubber. I gasped, hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped the notebook. The ladder yo-yoed, creaking under the weight. I backed away, heart at my throat. The rain intensified, pattering loud against my coat. The world narrowed to the flashlight's cone, the ladder, the boot. Then the boot lifted. Someone ascended into darkness. A faint rustle of clothing, then silence. I swallowed, knuckles white around the notebook. I should follow, call for backup. I should run. But I stayed rooted, the ladder's echo still resonating through my bones. I clicked on my radio. "Dispatch." Static swallowed my words. I clicked off, cursed. There was no time. I looked up at the tower, at the boots just out of sight. Midnight's toll would come any second. And the last victim, the one I'd missed, was waiting. For closure, for exposure, or for something far darker. I pressed the notebook to my chest, closed my eyes, and whispered into the storm. "You won't get away." A wind gust rattled the tower cage. I opened my eyes. The boots were gone. The ladder stood empty, leading into blackness. Below, the mortar circle glowed faintly in moonlight. The letter E was joined now by an upside-down R next to it, like a code multiplied. E, reversed R. I exhaled, breath trembling. I knew what tomorrow held: one final sight, Hollow Creek Road, and a reckoning that might consume me too. But as I turned back toward the cruiser, boots wet, uniform sodden, I heard it, soft, metallic, like applause. A faint clapping, 6 slow beats, echoing against the tower's steel legs, coming from the deepest shadow. I froze, heart stuttering. The world trembled with possibilities. Then the wind and rain swallowed the sound, leaving only the labored drum of my own blood, and the knowledge that some shadows refused to die, and that my final encounter under the watchful gaze of a hollowed tower would be far more than I could bear. I stood alone, flashlight flickering, in the uneasy calm before midnight's verdict. And I realized the story was never mine to close. It was still being written, by hands I couldn't see, by voices I couldn't hear, and by a killer who, even in death, knew how to pour a masterpiece of terror in wet concrete, one soul at a time. I cut the engine as soon as I rolled onto Hollow Creek Road, a straight stretch of tar flanked by dense pines, whose branches interlocked overhead, blotting out moonlight. The only illumination came from my cruiser's dim dome light and the half-faded spotlight mounted on the roof. At exactly midnight, the clock glowed 0000. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stepped onto the cracked asphalt, flashlight in hand. The air was thick, humid, sticky enough that each breath felt drawn through a damp cloth. 2 miles back, I had told dispatch I was investigating a report of debris on the road. Now, alone under the pines, I realized how hollow that excuse sounded. This was the final summons. One more to go. Midnight tomorrow, Hollow Creek Road. Be alone, or be next. I'd followed the breadcrumbs through quarries, bridges, barns, church altars, cemeteries. Each new slab and clue pushing me here, to the last site. I clicked the flashlight on and swept its beam along the road's edge. My boots crunched over scattered gravel and broken glass. A half-buried traffic sign lay face down in the shoulder dirt. Road ends. I crouched, touched the metal's wet back. I felt the corroded letters, flipped the sign over in my hand to read the front. Someone had added fresh white paint to cover the word ends, leaving only road. As if warning that no road ever truly ends. I set the sign aside and stood, scanning the tree line. The pines swayed silently. No wind, yet branches rustled as if whispering. My flashlight caught a series of low markers set at irregular intervals. Small wooden stakes with red ribbons tied around them, leading off the pavement toward a rough clearing half hidden by ferns. I followed the stakes, each 70 feet apart, like a morbid breadcrumb trail. At the clearing's center lay a pallet of split logs and an overturned galvanized trough. Rainwater pooled inside it, reflecting the flashlight beam like a dark mirror. Beyond the trough, pressed into the mud, was the final slab. A square of concrete about 2 feet on each side, edged by jagged rocks. I knelt at its corner and ran my hand over its rough frame. The mortar was cold but cured. Fine cracks ran across the surface. In its center, pressed deeply, was a boot imprint, size 7 again. Inverted triangles, the unmistakable RF letters stamped into the sole's heel. But here was the twist. Beside the boot print were 2 small, child-sized footprints, teeny treads like those of sneakers. And carved into the concrete, upper right, 3 letters, M-O-M. I sat back on my heels, heart pounding faster. M-O-M. Mother of Marla, mother of Emily, or mother of me? The initials twisted in my mind. The child prints slanted toward the boot, as though following it into darkness. My throat ached. I swallowed hard. I radioed in. "Deputy Callahan, final slab located, requesting coroner and forensics." My voice cracked like dry wood. Static hissed, no acknowledgement. The clearing felt charged, like a grand finale built for terror. I stood and circled the slab at a careful distance, keeping my eyes on the stakes that marked the path. They fluttered in the breeze, though once I'd stepped here the air had been still. The silence pressed down, broken only by my own breathing. Then I noticed movement, a dark shape slipping behind the logs. I swung the flashlight and caught a flash of pale skin, too slender, too small for an adult. "Hello?" I called, voice shaking. No response. I took several steps forward, mud sucking at my boots. "Don't come closer," whispered a child's voice, soft and trembling. It came from the shadows just beyond the logs. I froze, mind racing. I pressed off the flashlight's beam and listened. Among the hum of insects, the soft drip of condensation, I could hear a faint sob. I clicked the beam back on and shone it over the logs. There, crouched between two pieces of timber, was a little girl, 7 or 8. She wore a tattered dress, mud up to her knees, hair plastered to her face. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused. Behind her lay a doll, its head cracked and one arm missing. My chest hammered. "Kylie," I whispered. It was the name on the only missing child poster I'd ever seen, a girl who vanished from a birthday party years ago on this very road. I crouched, voice gentle. "Hey there, it's Deputy Callahan. Can you tell me your name?" She looked up, expression empty. "Mommy made me follow him," she said, voice hollow. "He said I'd see where they all went. He said you'd need someone to show you." My mind refused to process it. Someone leading a child through all this horror. I glanced at the slab again. Child prints next to a boot imprint. The killer had forced a child into fresh concrete, or used her prints to augment his signature. "Kylie, it's okay," I said, reaching out. "I'm here to help." She flinched at my outstretched hand and scrambled back, disappearing behind the logs again. I sprang up, flashlight bobbing, scanning for her. Instead, I found a scrap of paper pinned under a rock beside the slab. I leaned over and plucked it free. Yellowed, folded twice, typewritten, "Thank you for coming. I wanted you to understand." Beneath, a hastily scrawled line in pencil. "She's not real. She's part of me." A chill shot through me. I dropped the note. The logs shifted behind me. I whipped around. No child, just oak-framed shapes and darkness deeper than black. I backed away from the slab, radio torn from my belt. I slapped the transmit button. "Dispatch." Only static. I jabbed the button again. "Dispatch, do you copy?" Nothing. I clicked off. My flashlight flickered and died. My heart stopped. I yanked it from my pocket, dead batteries. I hammered on the side until a weak beam sputtered back to life. The girl's sob came again, closer. I swung the light toward the logs. The little girl stood at the edge of the clearing, silhouette outlined by the sky's dim glow beneath the trees. Her head tilted unnaturally, hair dripping water with each tilt. Her dress was streaked with concrete dust, chalky patterns mirroring the prints on the slab. She took a step closer, hips moving side to side like a broken puppet. I shouted, "Kylie, stop!" But she only raised one hand, slender fingers reaching into the air. I noticed now the boots she wore. Adult-sized, black leather, inverted. Triangle treads, initials RF stamped into the heel. I stumbled backward, mind reeling. The child looked at me with a smile that was not a smile, too wide, too still, lips whispering, "Goodbye." Then she turned on silent feet and slipped into the woods, vanishing as if she'd never been there. My chest constricted. I shook in the clearing, staring at where she'd been. The slab behind me was just concrete now. No prints, no carvings. Its surface smooth as glass. I stepped forward, ran a hand over it, cool, untouched. The stakes marking the path had uprooted themselves. Ribbonless stakes lay scattered around, their wood splintered. I realized the logs were stacked where they weren't before. I was certain of it. I was certain of the little girl's eyes and the damp imprint of those boots. But the evidence had literally dissolved before me, like smoke evaporating in sunlight, or like a nightmare receding at dawn. I glanced up at the water tower in the distance, its single security light still blinking, counting down to what? I fumbled in my coat for my notebook, hands slick. I found the final page I'd written. One more to go. Midnight tomorrow, Hollow Creek Road. But the page was blank now. No writing, no ink, only the crease where the paper had folded. I stared at it, unbelieving. My radio crackled once, just a single crrrk, and died. The hum of insects receded, replaced by a heavy stillness. I listened for a heartbeat. Not my own, but something else. A slow, deliberate pulse in the earth beneath my boots. I tossed the notebook to the ground, the pages scattering like frightened birds. I ran back to the cruiser, sat behind the wheel, and locked the doors. I stared at the dark windshield, trying to see the clearing through the raindrops. There should have been logs, stakes, a concrete slab, a terrified girl, and yet there was nothing. I started the engine, hands shaking so badly I could barely shift into drive. Headlights snapped on, illuminating the road ahead. No signs of disturbance, no evidence of a killer or a child. Just the highway stretching into black. As I pulled onto Hollow Creek Road, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The clearing was gone. Trees pressed to the asphalt's edge as if the pasture had never existed. I pounded the steering wheel. It wasn't real, I said to my reflection, voice raw. It can't be real. But the final message remained, burned into my mind. She's part of me. And the unanswered question lingered. Had I confronted the killer's final trick? Or had I glimpsed a specter conjured from my own guilt? The cruiser's clock blinked over and over. 0001, 0001. And I realized some roads don't end. They loop back into the darkness, dragging you with them, until you become part of the story yourself. I eased the cruiser off the highway shoulder and into the rutted farm access road, every jounce of the suspension rattling through my spine. The night sky is a flat charcoal sheet, the moon drowned behind thick clouds. I'm Deputy Jackson Keller, Crestwood County, nearing 2 years on this beat, and some nights the loneliness feels sharper than the cold. My breath puffs out in short bursts as I climb out, shotgun in hand, boots sinking into frost-hardened gravel. The Benson farmhouse sits 30 yards ahead, its pale siding dulled by years of neglect. The porch light above the sagging step flickers like a dying pulse, sputtering twice before blinking out entirely. I tap the door frame with the barrel of my shotgun, listening for any sign of life inside. The radio crackles low in my vest pocket. Deputy Keller, dispatch here, you're 20? I clear my throat. 10-4, I'm on scene. No visual on anyone yet. Static hums like a swarm of insects before the dispatcher's voice cuts through. Threshold alarm was triggered 5 minutes ago. Farm owner's cell is out of range. No answer on callback. Copy, I say. My knuckles whiten as I tighten my grip on the shotgun. I can taste tension on my tongue. Out here, hours stretch until they snap you in two. I push the door open. It groans on ancient hinges, a low, struggling cry in the stillness. Inside, the air is stale and cold, as if the house exhaled once and never breathed again. My flashlight beam catches a scattering of corroded tin cans and a threadbare rug frozen stiff under dust. I step over debris and follow the narrow hallway toward the kitchen, ears straining. My boots scrape across linoleum worn through to the concrete. At the far end, a window stands broken, shards of glass glittering in the beam, a ragged curtain fluttering from some distant breeze. A soft thump echoes from upstairs. My heart hammers. I raise the shotgun to my shoulder, every muscle coiled. "Sheriff's Department," I call up the stairs. "If anyone's here, come out with your hands visible." No answer, only the whisper of the wind through shattered glass. I climb the stairs, boots creaking on rotten wood. Each step threatens collapse beneath my weight, but it holds, barely. The hallway above stretches 2 doors on the left, 2 on the right. Only one door stands ajar, a sliver of inky blackness beyond it. My flashlight beam sweeps the walls, peeling wallpaper curling like dead skin. I inhale, reminding myself to breathe slow. I press forward, shotgun raised, until I stand before the open door. The floor beyond is carpeted in dust that thickens toward the room's center. I step inside. My beam reveals a small table pushed against the far wall, its surface littered with empty glass jars, mason jars, varying sizes, each one labeled in neat block letters. McAdams, Tyrrell, Santana. My stomach clenches. Those names match missing person reports that have floated across my desk in recent months. The jars reflect the dim glow of a lantern perched halfway across the table, its flame jittering in the draft. I approach the table, boots sinking into a layer of brittle leaves piled from a broken ceiling vent. A spiral-bound notebook lies open beside the jars. I flip it toward me. On each page, there are detailed entries. Times, locations, observations. February 14th, 2019. Noticed patrol patterns near Pumpkin Ridge Road. Deputy Keller responds at 0047. February 18th, 19. Saw Deputy Keller's taillights at Benson Farm. Alarms always reset by 1:11 a.m. March 3rd, 19. Deputy Keller fails to check East Barn. Next time we'll catch him off guard. My pulse pounds in my ears. Words swim on the page. Next time we'll catch him off guard. A faint scuffle behind me. I whirl, shotgun snapping to aim, but there's nobody there. The closet door to my right creaks open a fraction. My breath hitches. I step closer, boots silent on dust. The closet is empty except for a couple of moth-eaten coats hanging in a corner. Then my flashlight catches movement on the wall. Footprints pressed into the dust. Bare toes, small, no more than 6 inches long, leading from the closet toward the only window. I snatch the notebook, tucking it into my jacket as I move to the window. The sash is cracked, hanging crooked, the glass broken. I squeeze through and drop onto the roof of the single-story addition below. Metal pipes coil under my boots, old heating ducts rusted through. The ground lies 20 feet below, muddy field faintly visible in the beam. I climb down the side of the house, toes hunting for purchase on rotting boards. At the bottom, I land in a tangle of wet leaves and reach for the shotgun. I skid backward as something shifts behind me, rustling in the corn stalks over my shoulder. I whirl, barrel sweeping the stalks. My beam falls on a battered white pickup, license plate hanging by one screw. Its window is down, the interior lit by the dying glow of a dashboard light. No one inside. I kneel, pressing the barrel beneath the door. Inside, the plate matches a vehicle reported stolen 2 nights ago in Laurel, 15 miles east. The memory register pings in my mind. Missing farmhand found dead off Route 15, truck missing. My radio crackles once, fragmented. I jerk the channel knob. Keller to dispatch. Suspect vehicle found. Plate matches stolen truck from Laurel. I need units en route, code 3. Possible connection to homicide. Silence. Then, a few minutes later, a crackled reply. Copy, Keller. Units are 60 minutes out. I lower the shotgun, jaw clenched. 60 minutes? Out here, that might as well be days. I scope the dark field. The house's broken windows stare back like emptiness. Then I see them. Breadcrumbs of prints in the soft earth. A set of footprints, small again, weaving away from the truck toward the stand of pines that edge the Benson property. My gut twists. I follow, the shotgun a heavy promise of protection in my arms. Each step crunches on frost-crusted grass. The night air presses in close, colder than ice against my face. At 10 yards from the tree line, the footprints stop. I shine the beam upward. Nothing but skeletal trunks and tangled branches. A low groan of wind. I step forward, boots slipping. The prints resume at my feet, leading deeper into the trees. My senses thrash. Every snap of twig, every rustle of leaf amplified. I inch after them. The forest floor lies carpeted in rotted pine needles. The beam reveals hollows and stumps that catch my eyes like hidden shapes. Then, ahead, the silhouette of something hunched, a shape too human to be tree bark. I freeze, heart raging. The silhouette twists. The lamp from my flashlight catches a flash of cloth, dull blue denim. The figure turns its head slowly, no light to show the face, but I see the hollow of empty eyes, a mask of darkness. It steps forward, no sound. My breathing hammers in my ears. I raise my voice, shotgun trembling. Show yourself. Sheriff's Department, now! The figure pauses, then inclines its head, as though acknowledging me. Behind it, through the trees, I glimpse the outline of the farmhouse, its windows gesturing like open mouths. I take a step forward, shotgun ready, but the figure does not move. Only stands, silent, waiting. A twig snaps beneath my boot. The figure flinches, then bolts. My finger tightens on the trigger, but I hesitate. Was that human? The chase begins, adrenaline flooding every vein. I sprint after the figure, boots slipping over wet needles. The beam bounces ahead, catching moments of sight. A shoulder, a flash of cloth, then darkness. Deeper into the pines we go, until the farmhouse and its lantern-lit windows vanish behind me. I'm chasing a ghost, until the beam catches something else. A shallow grave, half covered by leaves, right where the prints end. The earth is freshly turned, and I kneel, pressing my palm to the damp soil. Beneath my fingers a boot heel imprint. I swipe away leaves, and my flashlight reveals a twisted shape. Bone-white fabric and something dark. A shoe sole. I stand, stomach churning. I know what I'll find if I dig further, but I also know that the figure could circle back any second, watching. I stand, shotgun leveled toward the path I entered. Every nerve screaming. The wind shifts, and I hear it. A low, rasping whisper. Too soft to make out words, but undeniably human. Behind me, the forest closes in. I tighten my grip, breath shallow. The whisper repeats, closer this time. An urgent hiss. Keller. My name on the wind. I spin, sweeping the light. The grave is empty. Boots shuffle in the leaf litter. I fire a warning shot into the air. The crack deafens me, reverberating through the trees. Silence falls, thick and pulse-quickening. Then nothing but the whisper of wind through the branches. I radio dispatch. Suspect out here, possible ambush. I'm securing scene and calling for immediate backup. My voice is steady, though my hands tremble. And get a coroner out to this gravesite. No answer. I lower the shotgun, every instinct screaming that I'm not alone. I glance over my shoulder. The woods are still, the farmhouse lost behind tall pines. Somewhere out there in the dark, someone, or something, is waiting. I settle near the grave, flashlight trained on the soil. The wind dies, hours stretch, but I know I cannot sleep. Not here, in this black hole of a place. My radio lies dead at my side. My only company is the cold, the whisper of the pines, and the buried secrets hidden beneath the dirt. Daylight seems impossible. Yet I cannot leave until backup arrives. But when I glance toward the farmhouse ridge, I realize I won't be going inside again, at least not alone. Because in Crestwood County, sometimes the worst danger isn't out on the highways. It's waiting in the shadows of places you thought you knew, and it's writing you into its ledger, one name at a time. I lean against the edge of the shallow grave, breath misting in the chill air, every nerve alight. The sky above is a bruised purple where the first hints of dawn try and fail to break through. I scan the forest line, shotgun ready, listening for any movement. The whisper of my name still echoes in my mind, a cold reminder of how closely I'm being watched. I tap my radio again, hoping for anything. Static. It might as well be the howl of a wolf out here. My eyes drift back to the exposed earth. I kneel and brush dirt aside, uncovering more of the fabric, mottled dark with decay. I press my palm to the soil, feeling the faint impression of something beneath. This grave is deeper than it first appeared. My heart thumps. I place the barrel of my shotgun beside me, careful not to contaminate evidence, and start digging with my gloved hands. The earth is soft here, turned recently, roots relieved of the weight of soil. I scrape away leaves and damp clods, the smell of fresh earth filling my nostrils. With each shovelful of dirt, the shape becomes clearer. A torso wrapped in threadbare fabric. Not fully buried, but hidden with the intent that no one finds it until it's too late. I press my fingers into the collar of the coat, familiar stitching. My blood turns cold. This coat, a security guard from the high school parking lot, missing since early January. I yank harder, pulling until the shoulders clear. The body slumps free, and I catch a glimpse of pale bone through torn fabric. I catch my breath and slide back, hand returning to the radio mic despite the dead battery. Well, I mutter, voice low, that's one more file closed. The ground rumbles beneath me. No, it's my heartbeat, echoing so loud that I'm afraid someone might hear it. I sweep the tree line with my flashlight. Nothing moves, but the forest feels more alive than before, heavy with anticipation. I step back from the grave, wiping my gloves on my jacket. Evidence photos will have to wait until I can call it in properly. For now, I need to stay alert. I pocket my shotgun's empty shell from the warning shot, then slide the notebook from my pocket and flip to the most recent entry. April 10th, 19. Suspect observes backup times. Likely aware of response windows. Next, intercept. Before daylight, my jaw sets. That line cuts deeper than any bullet. Whoever this is knows standard protocols, response times, has studied my habits. Every call I've run is now a clue in someone else's twisted game. I fold the page shut and tuck the notebook back inside my jacket. I need to keep moving, keep searching, find whatever this person left behind. I stand, shoulders aching, and follow the footprints back toward the farmhouse. The ground here is uneven, pitted by abandoned root cellars and old fence lines. My boots slip once, jar my ankle, but I catch myself against a mossy fence post. I steady my breath, palms damp inside leather gloves. Every sense is sharpened, cold, damp air in my lungs, the echo of distant highway traffic. every crackle in the underbrush sounding like pursuit. The farmhouse sits on a slight rise, the early dawn light now a pale glow through overcast skies. I move up the slope, shotgun held low but ready. The front porch is silent, the broken window upstairs nothing but a dark hole. I push off the door with a gloved hand and step inside. Floorboards groan. Dust motes float in the beam of my flashlight as I navigate the hallway, keys jingling at my hip. Memories flicker. Cold calls here, trespassers there, but tonight it all feels alien. I head toward the back rooms, passing the kitchen where a half-melted candle dripped wax onto a chipped counter. In the dining room, chairs lie overturned, as if someone left in a hurry. My flashlight catches something on the far wall, a dark smear, too high for a child, too irregular for mere rot. I step closer, and my heart pounds as I identify the shape. A crude handprint, smeared in dried blood, at eye level for someone over 6 feet tall. I stare as the memory forms itself. The jars full of names, the mailbox entries, the carcasses buried just beyond sight. It's all part of a ritual, a message, the killer marking territory. My radio crackles. Deputy Keller, dispatch here. Backup ETA 10 minutes. I exhale, half relieved, half frustrated. 10 minutes feels like an eternity. I switch channels. Copy. Mark the body and grave location. I'm clearing the house. I click the radio off before another burst of static can tear through. I sweep the dining room, passing through the doorway into what must have been a parlor once, now full of cobwebs and broken furniture. A cracked mirror leans on the floor, reflecting my flashlight back in splinters of light. I approach, sweeping the beam across the warped glass until I see it. A message scratched into the wood beneath the mirror's frame. You can't hide. My breath catches. The words are coarse, the letters jagged, as if carved by fingernails. I wet my lips, forcing myself to swallow. The message is not old. The edges of the letters are sharp with fresh wood beneath. Whoever did this was here recently, stood in this same room, looking at the same reflection of a deputy who thought he was patrolling alone. I step back, shoulder brushing the door frame. The hallway stretches dimly away, 2 doors open like yawning mouths. I move toward the left door, flashlight guiding me. The room beyond is small, a bedroom, judging by the remnants of a bed frame. Clothes lie strewn on the floor, a dresser overturned. But my beam settles on something unexpected. A section of floorboard near the foot of the bed is askew, pried loose. I crouch and pull it up, revealing a hole perhaps 6 inches wide. Inside is a coil of rope, frayed ends knotted tight. I tug the rope free. It's thick, heavy, industrial grade. My mind races, perhaps used to bind victims or set trip lines. I don't know yet, but it's evidence that this place was more than a hideout. It was a workshop of horrors. I slip the rope into an evidence bag from my coat pocket, careful not to touch the fibers. A distant rumble, thunder or footsteps. I freeze, ear tilted toward the ceiling. The farmhouse creaks under its own weight, settling in the cold. But then, faint above the settling, the sound of dragging. Something moves across the floor above me. I stand, heart hammering, and look up at the ceiling joists. The sound stops halfway through the hallway, as though someone overhead paused. My finger tenses on the shotgun trigger. I call up the stairs. If you're upstairs, come out with your hands where I can see them. My voice echoes unnaturally loud. Silence. Then, from above, a single thud, like a body hitting the floor. My breath catches. That could be the missing man thrown down, or it could be the killer baiting me. I advance to the staircase, boots silent on the carpet. I grip the railing and climb, each step a calculated risk. The hallway above is darker now, the overhead light burned out. My flashlight beam cuts through the gloom, revealing 4 doors. The farthest door is closed, new-looking compared to the warped wood around it. The dragging stopped right outside that door. My pulse spikes. I approach, each footstep measured. At the door, I pause and listen. Nothing. Sweat beads at my hairline despite the cold. I raise the shotgun and ram my shoulder against the frame, levering the door open. It swings wide, and the beam sweeps inside. The room is empty except for a single chair, center stage under a bare bulb hanging from the ceiling by its cord. A coil of rope sits on the seat. The same thick rope I bagged downstairs. Beneath the chair, the floor is scuffed and scratched, as though something heavy was dragged away. On the back wall, scrawled in the same jagged handwriting, "Now it's your turn." My breath hitches and I stagger back against the hallway wall. My knees buckle for a moment until I catch myself. The words echo in my mind. It's impossible. I bagged that rope. Someone put it here after I left. This is a warning, or worse, an invitation. I radio dispatch in a clipped whisper. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Keller. I found another threat message. Need immediate assistance. Code 3, rooftop extraction if necessary." My own voice startles me by its steadiness. I force myself to move, stepping out of the room and slamming the door behind me. The hallway seems to close in, the walls lean over me. The farmhouse is alive with secrets. Footsteps behind me, rapid, deliberate, make me whirl. I sweep the beam down the hall. Nothing. The open door stands silent, its bulb swinging gently, casting the corridor in strobing light and shadow. The dragging sound starts again, this time from the room I just left. My heart seizes in that realization. The rope on the chair can't be downstairs anymore. The movement has to be beyond that door. I raise the shotgun, stepping toward it. Then a scream, raw, feminine, torn from lungs in panic, erupting from a room at the end of the hall. It grabs me by the gut. My legs move without thought, shotgun aimed, as I sprint down the hallway, passing the closed bedroom and the parlor, until I burst into a nursery. The walls are painted a faded blue. A cracked mobile spins overhead. The crib is empty, mattress bare. On the floor, a single shoe, pink, small. My flashlight lands on a dark stain on the wall. Tiny handprints painted in something wet and glistening. Blood. I swallow hard, shaking. The scream cuts off. Silence as sudden and sharp as a whip. I glance at the open window, curtains billowing. Outside, the morning light is pouring in now, pale and gray. A cool breeze carries the scent of snowmelt and pine. Beyond the nursery window, I see a flash of motion. Someone scrambling down the vines growing the house's side. Denim-clad leg. Then a figure drops to the ground and disappears into the underbrush. I raise the shotgun and fire 3 quick rounds at the retreating silhouette, but it's gone. Only echoes of gunfire answer me. I rush to the window, peering into the thicket. Muddy footprints trail into the woods, heading away toward the highway. Did I wound him? I don't know. I can't tell in the dim morning. Blood? Maybe just snow melting off metal. I can't risk checking out there, not yet. I close the window and turn back to the nursery. The quiet is unbearable. I kneel by the shoe, lifting it gently, fingers trembling. It's the missing farm owner's daughter's shoe, size toddler. My blood runs cold. There's a child out there, alone in this house with this menace. My radio finally crackles. Unit 4, backup is on scene. ETA 2 minutes. I exhale, relief mingled with dread. 2 minutes. 2 minutes is all I have to secure this place. I stand, shotgun at ready, and move toward the nursery door. My boots echo on the wooden floor. I step into the hallway, scanning left and right. The house is empty of living souls, except for me, but the killer is out there, watching, planning, breathing. My finger hovers on the trigger as I head for the stairs, preparing to sweep the rest of the house with backup. I will find that child. I will not let her become another jar of a missing name. I march down the hall into the faint glow of morning, steel in my bones, determined to end this nightmare. But as I pass the door to the first-floor study, I catch a glimpse through the glass pane. The notebook I thought I secured sits on the desk, open, pages turned to a new entry. April 15th, 19. She sleeps now. When Deputy Keller finds her, it will be too late. My stomach twists. The final warning, scrawled in fresh ink. I close my eyes, swallowing bile. The killer's game is far from over. And now, more than ever, I know that finding her, and surviving, will be the hardest call I ever run. I step away from the study door, my boots thudding against the warped floorboards with heavy certainty. The morning light through the windows makes strange shadows that dance across the walls. I click my radio mic. Keller to all units, backup on scene. I'm in the farmhouse. Entry point at the front door. Possible hostage situation. Proceed with caution. No sooner do I speak than the front door swings open and 2 patrol cars crunch down the rutted driveway. Flashing lights spin through broken window panes, but I hear no sirens, just engines cutting out one by one. Through the doorway, Corporal Diaz appears first, rifle raised but held low. Behind him, Deputies Reeves and Stanton fan out, hands on holsters, faces grim. I acknowledge them with a brief nod. "She's in here somewhere," I say, voice low. "Child, possibly 2 or 3 years old, last seen in the nursery." I pivot, signaling them down the hall. "Reeves, Stanton, sweep the first floor. Diaz, you're on the stairs with me. We clear rooms systematically. Move." They spread out instantly. Reeves and Stanton move into the kitchen and dining room, sweeping left. Diaz and I approach the staircase, shotgun and rifle ready. Every step up feels fragile under our weight. The house groans, as though protesting our intrusion. Halfway up, I pause and glance back. The front door is shut, bolted. The sunlight pools on the dirty floor. My eyes flick to the study door, closed now, with the notebook still inside. No sign of movement. I press on. At the top of the stairs, Diaz checks the hallway while I listen. The wood beneath my boot creaks. I signal him, open the first door to the left. He does, rifle scanning inside. It's a small bedroom, empty, no sign of the girl. The door behind us creaks again. I tighten my grip on the shotgun, heart thudding. We move on. The second door on the left is half open. A bathroom, tub cracked, sink broken. I peek in, no one. My breath is steady despite the pounding in my chest. The stench of mildew and decay fills my nostrils. We back out silently. Diaz covers me as I approach the last 2 doors on the right. The first opens onto what must have been a master bedroom. Faded floral wallpaper, broken shelves, no sign of life. I sweep my light across the floor. Nothing. The final door is at the end of the hall, the one I pried open earlier. I signal to Diaz and raise the shotgun to batter it down, but a soft cry stops me cold. A child's whimper, barely audible, but unmistakable. My heart leaps. I rack the shotgun, the metallic click echoing. Diaz hears it too. His finger tightens on the trigger. We exchange a glance. No words needed. We move to the door together. I place my shoulder against it and kick. The frame gives and the door swings inward. In the center of the room, a small girl sits in the corner, back to us. She's naked to the waist, arms wrapped around her legs. Dirt and leaves stick to her skin. Her hair is matted. I lower the shotgun, turning it butt first so as not to frighten her more. "Hey there," I say softly, voice gentle. "It's okay, you're safe now. I'm Deputy Keller. What's your name?" She doesn't answer. Tears stain her cheeks. I crouch a few feet away. Behind her, on the wall, scrawled high above in jagged red letters, "She's mine." The girl flinches and looks at me. Her eyes are wide, dark, and frightened. I extend a gloved hand. "Can I help you up?" She doesn't move. I look to Diaz. "Cover us." He nods, rifle up, scanning the hall. "Sweetheart," I say, voice even. "It's okay, you're not alone." She stares at me, uncertain. "We're friends." I inch closer. The floor creaks beneath me. She scrambles, backing away, knees scraping the wood. She bumps into the wall and stumbles. I freeze, heart in my throat, ready to catch her if she falls. Instead, she turns and races for the door. Small legs but swift. I lunge with the shotgun to block her path. She cries out, head ducked. We collide. I slip, knock her small body gently aside to avoid crushing her. She scrambles into the hallway, crying. I catch sight of Reeves running up the stairs, drawn by the sound. He scoops the child into his arms. "Deputy Keller," he calls, voice relieved. "Got her." I exhale and step back. The girl clings to Reeves, sobbing, face buried in his uniform. I turn to Diaz. "The room, clear the closet, check for anything else." He steps inside and shines his light around. A wooden crate lies on its side. Inside are dolls, childish toys but torn and viciously stained, like they'd been used in rituals. Diaz's jaw tightens. He backs out and closes the door behind him. I glance down at Reeves carrying the girl. "Take her to the cruiser. Keep her warm. I'll handle this." Reeves nods, moving down the stairs. Stanton emerges from the kitchen, hauling a bag of evidence, jars, lanterns, notebooks from the first floor, all bagged. He glances up at me. "We got enough to put him away for life." He looks toward the nursery. "Are we pulling from that grave too?" I meet his eyes. "We'll need a coroner and CSI. For now, secure that site. Don't let anyone in or out." Stanton nods and exits with the bag. Diaz and I head back to the study at the end of the hall. The door stands closed, the notebook's pages still turned to the last threat. I place my hand on the knob. Inside, the notebook has twisted across the desk. On the open page is a new entry, written in a child's scrawl, "Play with me." Beneath, at the bottom of the page, a single smudge, tiny, bloody fingerprint. My stomach lurches. I know the writing isn't the killer's usual ragged style. This is something else, something that's been here all along. I flip through earlier pages, every entry made by one hand, but this last by another, the child's hand. I pocket the notebook and step back. Diaz watches, rifle still up. "Someone brought her up here," I say. "He wanted me to find her." My lips tighten. "We have to check the basement now." The stairs down are narrow and unlit. I switch my flashlight to red lens, advance foot by foot. Diaz follows. The basement door groans as I push it open. Cold air drifts up. I step down, each stair moaning beneath me. The red beam cuts through thick dust motes. The room opens into a low-ceiling storage area. Tools, broken furniture, empty barrels. The smell of damp rot is overpowering. I sweep left, empty, then to the right, an alcove under the main floor joists. I crouch and shine my light inside. Clothes, shoes, toys, child's items scattered as though dumped. My breath catches. I rise and sweep the rest of the room. In the far corner, I find it. A small door, hidden behind stacked crates. The wood looks new. I signal to Diaz. He racks around in the chamber. I push the door. It swings outward easily, revealing a cramped crawlspace beyond, barely 2 feet high. A stale, metallic smell leaks out. I shine my light inside. Chains on the floor, a dirty blanket, a child's stuffed animal, once bright, now caked in grime. My heart pounds. The crawlspace seems to breathe, walls pressing in. Diaz grips my shoulder. "Sir, I don't see any footprints down there. Could be a trap." His voice is tight. He could be watching from the back. I glance at the narrow tunnel leading away. Through the red glow, I see something glinting on the floor, metal like the clip of a handgun. I step forward, foot sliding on damp earth. The tunnel slopes downward. I crouch and stretch out the shotgun. Diaz watches the entrance. Then I hear it. A soft, childlike giggle. My blood freezes. The crawlspace behind me ripples like someone disturbed the air. I shine the light back. Nothing. The giggle again, clearer, coming from the far end of the tunnel. It's her voice, yet not the frightened sob I heard upstairs. This is playful, taunting. I fight the urge to run. My duty is here. I whisper, "Child?" It's me, Deputy Keller. No answer, just another giggle, echoing off the low ceiling. The beam catches something on the wall, small handprints in blood leading deeper. My pulse rockets. I take a cautious step forward, shotgun sweeping ahead. Another giggle, closer now as if dancing just out of range. I scan left, right. Nothing but crude stone walls. The tunnel opens into a square room, the killer's hidden chamber. The child stands in the center, shadowed by darkness, her head tilted, hands clasped behind her back. She turns slowly, face blank, eyes too bright in the red light. I raise the shotgun. "Ma'am, step out, you're safe now." My voice betrays my strain. She smiles, small and knowing, and shakes her head. Then, from the shadows behind her, a shape emerges, tall, lanky, cloth mask stretched over a grin. The flicker of a blade catches the red light. The figure steps forward, advancing slowly. The child remains motionless. The tunnel doorway behind me lies open, the only exit. Diaz's voice crackles in my ear. "We've got the perimeter, sir. Entry from the front only." No chance for a safe route. The figure's footfalls are soft against the dirt floor. The child giggles again, turning away from me. My finger tightens on the trigger. He reaches for her. I fire. The report roars, reverberating through the tunnel. The masked figure stiffens and collapses against the wall, a dark stain spreading. But I don't see if the shot hit him or the child. It's too sudden. The tunnel plunges into silence. Then the child screams. I scramble forward, daggering the shadows with my light. The figure lies still, no pulse flicker. I rush to the child's side, dropping the shotgun. Her slender body lies twisted where the figure collapsed, cry muffled against the dirt. I scoop her up, pressing a gloved hand to a wound at her waist. Blood seeps through my fingers. Her small body trembles. I shout into the mic on my shoulder. Officer down! Hostage shot! Need medics now!" My voice cracks. The red glow flickers as my flashlight loses battery. My head spins with guilt and terror. The child's eyelids flutter. Her hand finds mine, gripping weakly. A single word escapes her lips in a whisper, barely audible. "Papa?" I freeze. The blood drains from my face. The word echoes in my mind. Her father's voice. The man missing from the road. The barn accident. The truck. I realize with a slam that the masked figure was not an unknown predator. It was her father. And he saved her from something far worse. Pain shoots through me as sirens begin to wail faintly above. My grip tightens on the child, pressing her close. I stumble backward, bumping into the tunnel wall. The echo of her whispered word hangs in the blood-damp air. Daylight tries to break through the tunnel's edge, but all I see is her pale face, voice calling out a name I never knew. And in that moment, I understand the final, horrifying twist. The true monster is still out there, waiting for dawn. I press the barrel of my shotgun into my shoulder and pivot away from the crawlspace entrance, every muscle coiled for the next move. The girl rests in Reeves's arms, her face pale and lips trembling as he carries her toward the front door. I glance back at Diaz. His rifle remains trained on the dark recesses of the crawlspace, eyes sharp behind mirrored lenses. The wooden beams overhead sag under years of water damage, creaking like weary bones. My lungs burn with cold air as I descend the basement stairs, boots finding purchase on each step. At the bottom, I stand before the entry under the joists, flicking my light across the packed dirt floor. The flash of red lens cuts through dust motes, illuminating the scattered debris. Broken furniture, fraying rope, scraps of torn fabric. I step forward and scan each corner systematically. Left to right, right to left, breathing shallowly to keep the beam steady. Beneath a collapsed crate, I glimpse a small, muddy footprint. Child-sized, but not the girl's. The heel is bruised and cracked. I kneel and draw a gloved finger along the print's edge. It fills with gritty earth. There's another beyond, deeper in the crawlspace, leading toward a low hatch in the far wall. "Diaz," I whisper into the hush. "Cover me." He tightens his grip and scans the dark. I approach the hatch, shoulder pressed against the cool concrete wall. Cobwebs cling to its metal frame. My breath clouds before me. I slide my hand along the hatch's edge and pull. It groans, revealing a narrow tunnel sloping downward at a steep angle. Damp air gusts out, carrying the faint odor of decay and something else. Something coppery. I set the shotgun down and kneel to inspect the opening. The tunnel walls glisten with moisture, and the floor is slick with mud. I weigh my rifle in my hands, then lift it and slip into the tunnel. Diaz follows a pace behind, flashlight dancing along the wall. The tunnel narrows until I'm bending double, rifle muzzle leading. Each footstep sinks an inch or two. My boots leave prints in the soft earth. The tunnel descends for what feels like 50 paces before leveling out, then opening into a wider chamber. We emerge into a low-ceiling room, barely 8 feet across. The air is thick, and the beam of my flashlight picks out crude symbols scratched into the walls, rows of marks tallying something. Beneath one symbol is a date, April 13th, 19. Another cluster is crossed out. My pulse kicks up. The dates correspond to 3 days ago. Someone has been here recently, marking time. Across the chamber floor, a mound of earth rises beneath a faded quilt. I rack a shell into the chamber, gloved fingers tight on the rifle's stock. Diaz moves beside me. "I see movement," he whispers. I sweep the beam over the quilt. It stirs. I step forward and grip the edge, pulling back the quilt with one motion. The chamber falls silent, save for our breathing. Under the blanket lies a narrow coffin-like box, handmade, splintered pine. I crouch and place a hand on its lid. Someone carved initials into the wood. I.M. A childish scrawl. Outside, the mournful cry of the girl echoes faintly, carried down through the hatch. My heart seizes. Whoever placed her here intended for her to stay, but now she's in Reeves's care. I slide my rifle off my shoulder to free a hand, then pry the box's lid slowly. The hinges squeal. Dust drifts in spirals. Inside, bound in thick burlap, is a bundle. My breath catches. I shove the lid fully open. The burlap writhes as though breathing, and I yank back the cloth. A body, small, maybe 5 years old, lies curled inside, eyes wide and unseeing. The skin is cold, chalky. Tears have frozen on the cheeks. Around the neck is a crude lanyard holding a silver locket. I open it with gloved thumb. Inside is a photograph of a man in a sheriff's uniform. Deputy Keller, younger, fresh-faced, standing in front of the Benson farmhouse. My own face staring back at me. I gasp and stagger backward, knocking against Diaz. The locket tumbles free, clinking on the dirt floor. Diaz kneels and retrieves it, flipping it open to peer inside. His jaw goes slack. You're in this, he rasps. The girl we rescued, she's hers. He indicates the corpse. He buried his daughter and kept yours alive. My mind races. The child upstairs, is she truly the Benson girl or a decoy? The killer played us, sacrificing his own flesh to trap me, to unnerve me. Sweat beads my forehead in the stagnant air. Clench the rifle and press. Its butt into the padding of my jacket, grinding my teeth. A faint rumble echoes through the tunnel. The hatch overhead shudders. Footsteps approaching, heavy. We're not alone. Diaz gestures upward, whispering, "He's coming for the living child." I meet his eyes. "We secure this remains," I breathe. "Then we extract, now." He nods. I shove the lid back down, brace the coffin with my knee, and scoop the little corpse into my jacket. It's light, too light. The life gone from that body is absolute, a haunting emptiness. I carry her out of the chamber, Diaz close behind, map in hand for extraction routes. We climb back through the hatch, boots slipping on the slick ramp. At the top, the door smashes shut behind us as something heavy strikes it from below, wood splintering. I spin and fire 2 rounds through the hatch opening. A crack echoes like thunder. My radio sputters. "Deputy Keller, this is dispatch." "Units are down. Hostages wounded. What's your status?" I jam the radio button. "Dispatch, I have remains and 1 living child, possible imposter. Need immediate medical evac at Benson site. Plan B needed. Over." Static buzzes. Then, "Copy. Plan B. Hold position." Air support 10 minutes out. I exchange a look with Diaz. My heart still screams. I lean against the hatch, gaze flicking to the fallen lid beneath my boot. The locket's silver chain dangles from my pocket. I feel the cool weight of truth. The killer carved my daughter's fate into bark and bone, offering his own child's life to keep the game alive. I turn, sighting down the tunnel. The silent path that led me here, lined with tally marks and bone-white secrets. I raise the rifle, ready for the final stand. Overhead, the morning sun threatens the horizon, but here below, darkness reigns. I whisper into the gloom, more to myself than to any witness. "I'll find you. I swear, I'll find you." A distant echo answers, a child's giggle, twisted and soft. The hatch rattles again, and I know the killer waits 1 flip of a switch, a misstep, a heartbeat away. And in that moment I understand, this nightmare will never end. Not until every dark secret is dragged into the light. The tunnel around me seems to pulse, a living thing eager for the blood to spill, the next name carved into its cold walls. My grip tightens on the rifle. I step forward into the shadows, into the unending hunt. I step forward into the tunnel, each breath a mist in the stale air. The beam of my rifle light slices through darkness, revealing splintered wood and cold stone walls etched with tally marks. My boots sink into wet earth, the echo of my steps swallowed by the press of shadows. Behind me, Diaz lingers at the hatch, his silhouette a dark sentinel against the faint glow from above. I keep moving, eyes locked on the path ahead, heart hammering louder than any footfall. The narrow passage slopes downward, and water drips from overhead beams, plinking against the muddy floor. I taste dampness on my tongue and swallow hard, reminding myself to stay focused. Somewhere deeper, beyond sight, the faint rustle of movement waits, patience incarnate. I pause where the tunnel widens into a rough-hewn corridor, thick with the scent of earth and sweat. I crouch, rifle aimed, scanning left to right. Nothing but more carved dates. April 14th, 19, April 16th, 19, and crude drawings of a figure chasing a smaller one. My pulse spikes. This was his gallery, each mark a countdown to my arrival. I rise and press on. The corridor narrows again until I'm forced to turn sideways, shoulder to the wall. The beam catches a small alcove, a meager cubby scraped into the rock. Inside, an old wooden toy truck lies half buried in mud. I step closer, kneel, carefully pull it free. Mud drips through the toy's worn wheels. I pocket it, a grim trophy of this place. The passage ends at a crude door, 2 planks of rotting wood held together by rusted hinges. No latch, just push. I raise my rifle and step forward, pushing the door inward. It groans, scraping along the earth until it stops at a 90-degree angle. The beam falls into a wide chamber dimly lit by shafts of weak sunlight filtering through cracks high overhead. Dust motes spiral lazily in the air, and for a moment the world feels suspended. My eyes adjust, and I see walls of stone, rough-hewn, enclosing a space no larger than a small classroom. In the center lies a circle of broken chains and frayed rope. The dirt is dark with old stains. I swallow and move in. Something glints at the edge of the circle, a metal tin, corroded. I kneel, rifle set aside for a moment, and pry open the lid with gloved fingers. Inside, yellowed Polaroids. Each is labeled in shaky handwriting. April 12th, 19. Benson daughter. April 13th, 19. Middle school janitor. April 14th, 19. Postman Dale. One photo, the most recent, shows me, sandwiched between shots of the child upstairs and the corpse in the coffin. My own face stares back, unblinking. Underneath, scrawled, April 17th, 19, Deputy Keller. A chill rakes down my spine. I yank my gloves off long enough to flip the photo over. On the back, in tiny red letters, "Your turn." I mutter, voice tight, his twisted timetable. My fingers tremble as I replace the tin and stand. I grab the rifle, sweeping the room for any other evidence. The walls bear no writing beyond the dates. The chains in the center are too thin for a grown man, but sturdy enough to hold a child's wrists. I recall the nursery screams, the crawling space, the child who laughed at me in here. A sudden crack echoes from the far side of the chamber, a loose stone shifting. I swing the beam, pinpoint a narrow crack between 2 stones, just big enough for a hand. I approach and press my palm against the cool rock. Behind, the corridor yawns black. I try the stone. It moves slightly. I step back and raise the rifle. One shot should break it free. I kneel, aim, and fire. The report shatters the silence. Stone chips and dust rain down, revealing a second tunnel beyond. Diaz's voice crackles through my earpiece. "Deputy, what's your status?" I tap the mic. "Found a hidden shaft, continuing onward. Cover remains back here." "Copy that. Units are approaching perimeter. Extraction inbound." I flick off my earpiece. The hidden tunnel slopes upward at a steeper grade. I climb through, the air growing fresher. Faint breeze brushing my face. At the top, I emerge into the farmhouse's attic, where broken beams frame the dawn sky through gaping holes. Sunlight bleeds across dusty floorboards. I squint, raise the rifle, eyes adjusting. The attic is empty except for overturned crates and shredded insulation. Footprints in the thick dust lead toward one crate shoved into a corner. I follow, heart in my throat. Behind the crate is a trapdoor, hinges exposed. I pull it up. It groans a protest. Inside is a rope ladder descending back into darkness. I hesitate. There can't be two ways in, but there is. I grip the ladder and climb down, each rung cutting into my glove. The ladder deposits me into the farmhouse's crawl space again, but at the far side, opposite the entrance Diaz and I used. The narrow tunnel stretches toward the back of the house. I peer through a crack in the wooden planks. In the fading light, I see a figure hunched by a collapsed ceiling beam, illuminated by a lantern. He's busy tying something, a new victim maybe, or preparing a final tableau. My blood runs cold. I whisper, "Diaz, I've got eyes on him. Second corridor, back of attic." His silhouette appears behind me through the hatch. I must have crept up without hearing him. He bears down on the trapdoor beside me. "Ready?" I whisper. He nods. We swing the planks open and drop silently into the tunnel beyond. The beam falls on the man beneath the lantern. He's shirtless to the waist. Sinewy arms hold thick rope around a frail frame sitting in a collapsed chair. The victim's face is hidden by dark curls. I step forward, increasing the beam's range, and see who it is, the Benson farm owner, gaunt and terrified, his eyes wide at my arrival. "Deputy Keller," he croaks, voice ragged. "You found me." He sounds relieved, yet broken. The rope around his wrists is taut. He's clearly been here for days. The lantern's glow picks out sweat and grime on his skin. Behind him, on the cracked wall, someone carved the words, "Save her." I raise my rifle. "Let him go," I say, voice low. "Now." The killer, standing behind the lantern on the low platform, steps into the ring of light. His face is uncovered. A man with hollow cheeks, a razor-sharp jaw, hair falling over cold eyes. He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "You're late, deputy." He gestures to the chained farm owner. "She's running out of time." I scan the walls for an escape. The tunnel behind me is too narrow. Returning the way I came would buy me seconds. Diaz moves up beside me, rifle aimed, eyes locked on the killer. "Don't move," I warn. He raises empty hands. "There's no easy way out," he says. "This ends tonight, one way or another." He grips a hunting knife strapped to his belt. "If you shoot me, the girl dies. But if you hesitate, he dies." He jerks his head toward the farm owner. "You decide which life matters more." My mind races. The kidnapped child still in Reeves's cruiser, the buried stepdaughter in the coffin, the farm owner tied here, and the killer's next victim. Almost certainly someone else hidden in these corridors. Every option is a sacrifice. My finger hovers near the trigger, body taut. I swallow, voice steadier than I feel. Unhand him and we'll negotiate. He laughs quietly, edge sharp. "Negotiate? You think this is business?" He steps closer, knife angled low. "This is my ledger. I keep balance." He nods toward the owner. "He took something from me and his daughter almost paid. Now he pays. And you," he tilts his head at me, "you pay for all the others you've lost." My stomach twists. "Release him," I repeat, voice cold. "Now." He sighs, raising the lantern. Shadows waver on the walls, the faces of the missing etched in dust. "You've driven the night shift for 2 years," he says. "Seen terror in empty barns, heard whispers in the dark. But you never saw me coming." He slides the knife free. "I'm your reckoning." Diaz shifts, finger tightening on the trigger. The farm owner's breathing is shallow, panic flooding his eyes. Sirens wail above, backup closing in. The killer glances up, unhindered by fear. He balls his fist, lantern swinging. Last chance, he hisses. My thoughts spin in a vortex. Shot, kill, ransom the farm owner, trade, negotiate, delay. The corridor seems to shrink. Sweat stings my eyes. The victim's life in my hands. The farmer who called me. The child in Reeves's arms. The buried girl. My own reflection in the locket. Every decision carves another tally in this dark ledger. I exhale and lower the rifle sight. Let him go, I say, tone final. The killer's eyes flash. For a heartbeat, time shatters. Then he lunges forward, knife raised. I fire twice, once to disarm, once to stop him. The first shot cracks the blade from his hand. The second catches him in the shoulder. He falls backward, lantern toppling, flame guttering out. Darkness reclaims the tunnel. Diaz moves fast. He kicks the killer's knife away and pries the ropes from the farm owner's wrists. I kick the chair aside and check the man's pulse. Strong, ragged, but alive. The killer groans, hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. My radio bursts to life over the crackle. Deputy Keller. Units entering house from front. Air support inbound. Medic ETA 2 minutes. Status? I click the mic. Suspect down, victim freed. We need medical ASAP here. I drop the radio and kneel beside the farmer. You're safe now, I tell him. He nods, tears tracking dirt lines on his face. I stand and check the killer, gasping for breath. The man we hunted, the architect of nightmares, lies vulnerable in his own trap. He meets my eyes, voice faint. You think this ends? I don't answer. I lift the hunting knife he dropped and lock eyes with him. It ends when I say it ends. I toss the knife aside and produce handcuffs. He closes his eyes as my cuff clicks shut. Behind me, Diaz peels open the hatch. Daylight floods in, the first true light I've seen in hours. The tunnel is empty, but for us. The farmer leans heavily on Diaz's arm, stumbling upward. I linger, scanning the walls one last time. The tally marks, now abandoned, stare back. I turn and climb toward dawn, stepping out of the underground and into the promise of rescue. But I know better. In Crestwood County, dawn is just another lie we tell ourselves. Because the ledger has been written, and I will carry its weight, one name at a time, until every shadow is emptied of its secrets. Above me, pink morning light breaks through clouds. My radio crackles. Deputy Keller, do you copy? I exhale and tap the button, voice steady. I copy. Situation secured. Bring everyone in. As I step into the fresh air, I fold the little toy truck from the alcove into my pocket. I look back at the farmhouse. Silent, battered, its secrets laid bare. The tally is closed for tonight, but the ledger remains open, and I will read every page. I step out into the pale dawn and lower my shotgun, shoulders sagging with the weight of hours that feel like years. The farmhouse looms behind me, battered and hollow, its windows dark and empty where life once hid. Engines roar as patrol cars pull up, boots pound on broken boards, and paramedics rush past, stretcher in tow. I hand the metal tin of Polaroids and the locket to Detective Reeves, who stands at the bottom of the cellar hatch, face ashen. Get CSI down here, I tell him. Reeves nods, slipping the locket into an evidence bag. I glance back toward the tunnel entrance, choking back the memory of bones piled like crude trophies and chalk-white whispers carved into the stone. Deputy Stanton taps me on the shoulder. Sir, the farmer wants to talk to you. He tilts his head toward Corporal Diaz escorting the Benson farm owner, Mary Benson's husband David, toward a blanket-wrapped cruiser. David's face is drawn and pale, the lines of shock still fresh. I walk across the yard, boots crunching on gravel scattered with shards of ceramic from shattered planters. David stops, eyes hollow. Deputy Keller, he says, voice trembling. Thank you. He swallows hard, gaze drifting to the farmhouse. You saved my family. I don't know how to thank you. I grip his shoulder. Just get her somewhere safe. I nod toward the cruiser where his daughter, bundled in a coat, sobs into a first responder's arm. I'll handle the rest. He nods and moves away. I turn back to the circle of officers gathering evidence. Sunlight weakly warms my back, but inside I feel the cold settle deeper. Detective Reeves approaches, wiping his brow. Deputy, CSI could use you downstairs. They want your walkthrough of the tunnels for evidence mapping. I hesitate, glancing at the busted cellar door. The ramp below had shards of wood I'd stepped over, blood still staining the lowest rung of the ladder. Every creak in that descent echoes in my bones. But duty calls. I nod. Reeves leads the way, radioing CSI to meet us underground. Corporal Diaz falls in beside me. He's quiet, jaw clenched, blood still smeared on his cuff. You okay, sir? He asks softly. I exhale. I'll live, I lie. Let's just get through this. We step down into the entry hatch. The air thickens immediately, stale with dust and damp. The beam from Diaz's rifle light reveals each notch in the wood ladder, each skull-pale mark on the wall. At the bottom, the tunnel smells of earth and rot, a reminder that beneath everyday life lies an ancient darkness. CSI and forensics crew are there, setting up cameras and markers along the walls. A forensic archaeologist, Dr. Lennox, greets me. Deputy Keller, she says, voice gentle. We'll need details on the hidden shaft, the collapsed chamber, and where you found the bodies. She holds a tablet, ready to map the site. I lead them through the sequence, through the larger corridor lined with dates, past the mud-caked Polaroid circle, into the hidden shaft behind the false wall, down the ladder, past the hidden chamber with tally marks, into the coffin alcove, then back up the ladder to the attic trapdoor, over the beam crawl space, back into the narrow tunnel to the final chamber where the killer held the farmer hostage. Each step reverberates with stale air and echoing footprints. Anything odd? Dr. Lennox asks after I finish the circuit. I glance at the numbered markers pinned to the walls. 10 points of interest, each with broken markers of metal tags. Yes, I say. The tally marks stop a day ago, and the final entry in the killer's notebook, your turn, was never photographed here. I reach into my pocket and produce the small notebook. Its cover is scuffed, pages stained with rain and sweat. I keep this on me. The last entry, and the child's writing, came after I left the site for backup. Dr. Lennox's eyebrows climb. That suggests he, or someone, returned after you left. That means he's still active. Her words land like a stone in my gut. He set this up to trap me, I say. But maybe he also circled back to move evidence, or more bodies. Behind us, Diaz coughs. I turn. He's staring at the ceiling bricks. Sir, he says, voice low. Look at that. I follow his gaze to a faint seam between stones where mortar is newer, cleaner. A hidden niche carved in just 2 bricks above head height. I shoulder aside the beam and reach up, pulling the bricks away like a faulty lever. Behind is a metal holder, a single Polaroid face down. CSI swarms forward, gloves snapping on. Dr. Lennox holds out a tray. She extracts the photo. I turn it over with gloved fingers. It's the missing high school janitor framed in the black border of instant film. His eyes stare blankly at me. On the back, in the killer's spidery script, April 17th, 1919, 5:02 a.m., next. And below, in tiny child scrawl, same as before, mine. My heart hammers as I read that final word, mine. Suddenly, footsteps echo above us, rapid, panicked. Boots skidding on the hatchwood, A faint thud as someone climbs down. Diaz raises his rifle. CSI team freezes. The hatch creaks, and a shape tumbles into the tunnel. A teenage girl clutching something to her chest, filthy, bleeding. I rush forward, dropping to one knee. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" I ask. She's about 13, wide-eyed, wild, and terrified. She presses a crumpled piece of paper into my hand, a hastily scribbled map of the tunnels, each corridor labeled in childish block letters, and at the bottom a message. "He's gone to make more. You can't stop him." She looks up, face streaked with tears. "He made me write it," she whispers. "He said I had to tell you." Behind her, the hatch slams shut. The echo ricochets, cutting through the stale air. I glance upward. No stairs, no ladder. The only exit is the way we came. The CSI team clusters around us, mounting lights, calling medical. I look back at the tiny hand-drawn map. Beyond the corridors we cleared, there's one unlabeled tunnel branching off. A dead end in the official blueprints. I hadn't seen it. The entire time I thought I'd sealed the killer's domain, but there's another passage I never found. One that leads away from the farmhouse, out into the woods, maybe to his next trap. My radio crackles overhead. "Deputy Keller, status." It's Reeves. I tap the mic. My voice is steady but cold. "We have one survivor. Evidence of one more chamber. The suspect's activity continues. I need aerial recon and a perimeter lockdown." Silence follows, then dispatch replies. "Understood. Perimeter establishing now. What's the survivor's statement?" I tuck the map into my jacket and nod at the girl. She says he's gone. I believe her. I glance at Dr. Lennox, who shakes her head. More bodies or victims could still be down there. I stand, heart pounding. The early morning sun filters through the cracks overhead, dust motes drifting like ghosts. I look into the darkness of the hidden niche where the Polaroid once lay. The killer's final message was clear. He's not done. He never would be. I step back, shoving the notebook and map into my coat pockets. I raise my voice so everyone hears, "Seal this hatch. No one in or out without my say-so. Lock down the farmhouse, grid search the property, and get me a K9 unit. We're tracking one suspect still on the move." I pivot and climb toward the hatch. My boots land on the first rung of the ladder, each step heavy. The teenage girl's sobs echo behind me, mingling with the labored breathing of CSI and the thump of boots sealing the tunnel entrance. I reach the top, haul myself out, and pause on the threshold. The dawn is breaking in pale ribbons of light. The farmhouse looms like a wounded beast against the sky. Beyond its edges, the Benson fields stretch empty, waiting to swallow the next victim. I know the killer's ledger is far from closed. He has another date, another name to carve into these walls, and inside me, a deeper dread takes hold. The realization that he's always one step ahead, watching from the shadows. I slide the hatch closed behind me, lock it with the key Diaz hands me, and stand in silence. The only sounds are distant sirens, the hum of police radios, and the whisper of the wind through cracked window panes. Then I hear it, a soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap coming from the dark interior of the farmhouse, as though someone's fingernails are rapping out a message on the peeling door frame. I draw breath, finger hovering near my holster, and in that brittle moment I understand the final horror. He's still inside. No amount of light can chase away what's buried in the dark, and sometimes the greatest danger lurks not beyond the beat, but within the very place you thought you'd saved. The tapping echoes again, slower this time. Tap, pause, tap, tap. I raise my shotgun, voice low and steady. Come out slowly, hands where I can see them. Silence stretches. And then, from the oppressive blackness behind the kitchen door, A child's voice, barely a whisper, answers, "Why would I do that?" The dawn light fails me in that moment. The farmhouse stands silent, but the terror inside has only just begun.